There's a version of kindness that feels like drowning. You know it well. It's the way your chest tightens when someone across the room looks sad. The way their pain becomes yours before they've even spoken. You don't choose it, it chooses you. You feel everything all at once, like your skin is too thin to protect you from the weight of the world. And for a long time you thought this was beautiful. You thought this meant you were good. Compassionate, awake to the suffering others couldn't see. But somewhere along the way, the gift became a prison. The very thing that connected you to others began to disconnect you from yourself. Because empathy, the real kind, the kind that runs deep, has a shadow. And no one talks about what happens when you feel too much, care too much, give too much, until there's nothing left of you but echoes of everyone else's needs. It probably started young. Maybe you were the child who could read the room before you could read a book. You learned to scan faces for tension, to decode silences, to become small when the air felt heavy. You became the emotional translator in a world that didn't speak its pain out loud. Perhaps there was a parent who needed you to be okay so they could be okay. Or a household where love felt conditional, where being seen meant being useful, where your worth was measured by how well you could soothe someone else's storm. You learned that your feelings were secondary, that to be loved you had to disappear a little. So you did. This is what psychologists call enmeshment, not the healthy kind of connection, but the blurred boundaries where you can't tell where you end and someone else begins. You absorbed their moods like weather. Their anger became your fear. Their sadness became your responsibility. And over time, you forgot that feelings can exist in a room without belonging to you. There's another pattern here too, one that runs quietly beneath the surface. It's called hypervigilance. Your nervous system, so attuned to threat, learned to stay alert, to anticipate, to fix before things break. You became fluent in the language of way, shifts in tone, the slight change in posture, the pause that means something's wrong. It made you invaluable to others. It made you exhausted. You remember moments that shaped this. The time you were 7 and your mother cried in the kitchen and you brought her tissues and told her a joke even though you didn't understand what was wrong. The way your father's silence filled the house and you learned to tiptoe, to be cheerful, to carry light into dark rooms. The friend in middle school who only called when she was hurting, and you stayed on the phone for hours because leaving felt like abandonment. You learned that love means carrying. That connection means losing yourself. That empathy means saying yes when your body is screaming no. And here's what no one told you. You can be conditioned to betray yourself in the name of caring for others. You can be taught that your pain is less important, your needs less urgent, your truth less valid. You can spend years believing that selflessness is virtue, not realizing it's become self-erasure. The pattern became automatic, invisible. You didn't choose it anymore. It chose you over and over. In every relationship, every conflict, every moment someone needed something, you didn't have to give. Now, as an adult, you do this without thinking. You do this in your relationships. Someone tells you they're struggling, and within seconds, you've abandoned your own plans, your own needs, to show up for them. You become their therapist, their savior, their emotional harbor. And when they feel better and walk away, you're left hollow, wondering why no one ever asks how you're doing, why your pain doesn't seem to register the way theirs does. You do this at work. You take on projects that aren't yours. You say yes when you mean no. You stay late, work weekends, absorb everyone else's stress because you can't stand watching people struggle. Your competence becomes your cage. People rely on you because you've trained them to. And you resent them for it, even though you built this dynamic with your own hands. You do this with your sense of self-worth. You measure your value by how much you give, how much you can endure, how little you need. You've convinced yourself that needing makes you weak, that asking for help makes you selfish, so you carry everything alone, and you call it strength, when really it's just fear dressed up as independence. You do this in your inner dialogue. You're harsh with yourself in ways you'd never be with others. When you set a boundary, you feel guilty. When you rest, you feel lazy. When you prioritize yourself, you feel selfish. The voice in your head sounds like judgment, like you're never doing enough, never being enough, because your worth has always been tied to your usefulness. You do this even in solitude. You can't sit with silence because silence means feeling, and feeling means confronting everything you've been running from. The grief you've never processed, the anger you've never expressed, the exhaustion you've never admitted. So you fill the space with noise, with productivity, with other people's problems, anything to avoid the uncomfortable truth that you're tired, that you've been tired for years. You wonder why you feel so alone, why connection feels more like obligation than intimacy, why you can give and give and give and still feel empty. And here's the truth, and you're afraid to speak out loud. Empathy without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. It's the quiet kind, the kind no one notices, the kind that looks noble from the outside while it hollows you out from within. You've spent so long feeling everything for everyone that you've forgotten how to feel for yourself. You become a vessel for other people's emotions, and somewhere in all that caring, you lost the ability to care for the person who needed it most. You. But here's what's also true. This capacity you have, this deep sensitivity, this ability to feel the world so intensely, it's not broken. You're not broken. You were just never taught how to hold it without being consumed by it. Healing begins when you stop seeing boundaries as selfish and start seeing them as sacred. A boundary isn't a wall, it's not rejection. It's the quiet truth that says, I can care about you without carrying you. I can feel your pain without making it mine. I can love you and still protect my own peace. You learn to name the difference between empathy and enmeshment. Empathy says, I see your struggle. Enmeshment says, your struggle is now my emergency. Empathy creates space. Enmeshment collapses it. And you get to choose every single time which one you're practicing. You also begin to grieve the childhood that taught you to prioritize everyone else, to grieve the relationships where you gave everything and received crumbs, to grieve the years you spent believing your needs didn't matter. This grief isn't weakness, it's honoring the truth of what you endured. It's making space for something new. Think of it like this, you're a cup. For years, you've poured yourself out for everyone who asked, never stopping to refill. You believe the cup was infinite, but it's not. It never was. And the most radical thing you can do now is protect your capacity to give by first giving to yourself. Not from leftovers, not from what remains, but first. Always first. This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. It makes your empathy a gift instead of a sacrifice. It means you can show up for others without disappearing in the process. You start small. You notice when you're absorbed in someone else's mood and you pause. You ask, is this mine to carry? You practice saying, I care about you and I can't take this on right now. You let people sit with their own discomfort instead of rushing to fix it. You remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone find their own way, and slowly something shifts. You feel lighter, not because you care less, but because you've learned to care wisely. You discover that true empathy doesn't require martyrdom, that you can be deeply compassionate and still honor your own limits, that saying no to others can be saying yes to yourself. The truth is this, you were never meant to save everyone. You were never meant to feel everything. You were meant to be human, beautifully, imperfectly human, with a heart big enough to hold love and wise enough to know when to let go. Your empathy is not your burden, it's your superpower. But only when you learn to wield it with boundaries, with discernment, with the understanding that the most important person you'll ever care for is looking back at you in the mirror.